session, and thank you all for taking out the time. This is Derek Gunter, and I'll be leading off with our presentation. And want to once again welcome you all to giving students the tools to build voice in the application process, the importance of personal statements and recommendations. And once again, this is just actually us as the members, just kind of showing you all who we are as the admissions diversity outreach team here at the Tufts University, but also knowing that we do have one other member as part of our team, so you're only get a portion. So yes, but we are all but a small but mighty team, but we really are passionate about the work around diversity, access, equity, and inclusion in terms of our outreach and our practices here at Tufts. Okay, and so for us, the purpose and goals of today's presentation are pretty simple. We would like to provide you all as counselors and CBOs, as well as the students out there, with a few tools to help you build a narrative about a student that is informative for admissions officers at highly selective institutions. And similarly, we would like to figure out ways to discuss the importance of and how to advise/build a personal statement for highly selective admissions processes. And so as we kind of go through and kind of think today, I would like to begin to just share a little anecdote with you all. And the way that I think about this anecdote is I think it really sets the tone of how we're going to really approach our work today. Students' academic record will obviously get them to the tryout. But for us at selective admissions offices, you know, their voice and how it resonates with our particular institution will actually get them on the court. So when we're thinking about that, we start off with a couple of big pieces for us. And the first big piece for us is the voice. And these are components of the applications that admissions officers use to really get a deep understanding of who the applicant is. And essentially, it's an opportunity for us to understand and really place ourselves within a student's lives. And so this is really comprehensive for us. And we want to see a really strong, cohesive narrative of the student. Important factors for us are really significant events, personal interests, and kind of cultural artifacts. And so when folks are thinking about this, the voice comes through the personal statement, the supplements that we ask, and also the letters of recommendation. And so even when I'm thinking of like significant events in a person's life, you know, are there some kind of like, you know, graduation moments? Was it a birthday? Was there maybe something that challenging or difficult that happened in one's life that really has stood out and really made a huge impact? And what has been that impact? And what has led that student to kind of really be motivated or push through and persevere through that? The second piece around personal interest, this is a huge thing for us, right? Like, what is the student really passionate about? What drives them? What are they thinking about? What kind of things and narratives are they really, really interested in that we really want to see as we're talking about a student that I could see in a personal statement? It might be that I identify also in a letter of recommendation, but maybe even a supplemental question, right, to kind of build that cohesion. And the last piece for me is always thinking about those cultural artifacts. And when I think about cultural artifacts, like, is there a picture? Is there maybe a necklace or a chain or something that someone has given a student that really speaks to who they are, their background, but like I said, really propels them to think differently about who they are and motivate them to be kind of successful. When I think about this there was a personal statement of a student that we read this year, and she wrote about her father coming home and how she and her mother used to clean the house and have dinner ready for him. And when you think about this student and you're thinking about this young woman writing about this, you're probably thinking about some very traditional gender roles. However, what she really articulated through her personal statement was when her father came in, he actually ran in, he was a mechanic, and he ran right into the shower and jumped right down to the table. And when he sat down at dinner, this was his way to say, you know what, thank you. And more often than not, he looked at his mother or at her mother and at her and said, you know what, thank you for everything that you all are doing because you are making this a great place for me to come home to and a great safe haven for me to think about every day about how beautiful my family is. So instead of really thinking about maybe some traditional roles, we were able to really take a good life or a good step in looking at her life. And one of the things that we think about here at Tufts is we always say, let your life speak. And through her essay, she actually did. The next big piece for us is obviously fit. And when we're thinking about fit, we say, you know, how are your interests really connecting with the values of the institution and the ways that we look for these attributes. And so the biggest pieces for me really are the mission statement of the institution and where you can find some of these things. I say when you're looking through the websites or you're trying to show a student a new institution and you're trying to talk to them maybe in their first year or their second year or even up to their junior or senior year, you really start them off maybe at that homepage and say, what do you see? What are some big statements? What are some buzzwords? Are there specific things that seem to be flowing from each page? Like, is there a word or two that comes from the admissions page that's also seen on the website of like the student activities, but it's also way down maybe connects to the academic component, right? Also along the academic majors. Like, is the school known for a particular academic major, or are they known for a particular type of art student? So even when I'm thinking about that mission statement or the academic majors, here at Tufts, one of the big buzzwords for us is the interdisciplinary approach. It's something that you can see throughout several websites, several different kind of key factors. So when we're looking at a student and we're really thinking about who they are and we're trying to build that cohesive narrative, one of the things that really stands out for us is a student who is interested in multiple things beyond just their major interests, career interests. What are they really thinking about and what are their values? Just below that, I often will say, what about faculty interest and faculty research? If I can't hone in on this one enough, I really try to strive and push for folks to really take a deep dive into this one. Because one, for the first part for us, it shows that a student has been able to do their homework and that a student has really looked at certain pieces, right? What is really guiding them to come to the institution beyond maybe just the name, what they've heard, or something that someone may have shared with them? I often share during our info sessions, it is really easy, especially here at Tufts, to click on just, our College of Arts and Sciences, do another click, and it'll pull up our centers. And you can see from there what different centers that we have on campus and some of the work that they're doing. You can even click on a major or college or school, and from there you can see all of the faculty, go to their website, see what they've recently published, and it really kind of get that idea of like, wait, can I really see myself here at this institution, not just because of what they value, but also what they hold for their academics, and also what the faculty are doing. Are there research opportunities that I could really see myself jumping in and getting involved in? The last piece is the campus visit or a virtual tour. More often than not, all of these pieces will be included that I shared above in kind of a campus visit or a virtual tour. You will hear lots of buzzwords. You can ask direct questions. And even when you do your virtual tours, what are they showing you? Pay kind of critical attention to these different images and these words, because I think they will help you really kind of pull together a really strong cohesive narrative when you're thinking about asking a student of like, well, do you want to apply to that school and why? What have you seen? What are they saying to you? What words resonate with you and what words really speak to you, right? And if there's something that I can also share that is not included in one of the bullets is, I always welcome the opportunity to say, why don't you reach out to one of us admissions folks, one of us, whether it's a staff member, a counselor, or someone higher up, and maybe even a team, to kind of say, you know what, if I have a few moments, can you tell me a little bit more about your school? What types of students are you looking for? Are there particulars? And as you're doing that, remember back to the bullets that I shared before. Are there certain values and mission parts of the mission statement that admissions counselor is trying to share with you? Are there pieces that they're really wanting to say, you know what, this is what we look for, and how is that really resonating, right? So like for us, when I think about Tufts, I think about a playful and intellectual and kind of intellectually curious student and also an altruistic student. So here I have an example of a student. This student is first gen, and this is the type of student that we look for, right? As you can see in the first paragraph, and I'll give you just a few seconds to read it, but I've actually bolded just a big kind of sentence because I think it really hits to some of the pieces that I spoke to. So in bold, what I see is that Rome wasn't built in one day, and pianists can't play Beethoven after the first week. I realize that there is a beauty in struggling, and it is even more marvelous to see the improvement due to perseverance. For me, when I'm thinking about like a first gen student and I'm talking and I'm thinking about them, I know that many times and more often than not, they have actually gone through some really strong challenges and difficulties, but really what's beyond the story. Also, what you see here that's very genuine and good is you see there's a little bit of playfulness, right? That Rome wasn't built in a day. That's kind of a cute little intellectual joke and a play on words. It's very tongue-in-cheek for us, right? And then I realized the beauty in struggling. You can see that automatically he's talking about overcoming and really pushing through in another real dynamic way, okay? In this next paragraph that I've been able to pull from his personal statement, you'll see another whole kind of side. And this is something that I think that is really important for us to really look at. And I'll give you a second just to take a pause, just to really breathe and see. So as I selected here, music is the only language that allows me to connect on a deeply personal and emotional level with those who have the passion for creative expression. Sharing my music and talking to other creative people allows me to hone my skills as an artist, as well as help them improve their skills. Using my musical linguistic ability, I grew into a more mature artist. Moreover, I grew into a more mature adult. So this right here, I selected this part because I think this really does speak to all of those different aspects. You see an intellectually curious student, you see an altruistic student because he's saying sharing my music and talking with the other creative people allows me to hone my skills as an artist. So he's really talking about putting in that time, putting in that energy, really talking through some of those other aspects and putting in that work, right? But then also within this, you see a level of development and a level of personal development. He says to us really plainly, I grew into a more mature artist and I grew into a more mature adult, which I think really brings us into who this person is, how they've grown, how they've pushed through. In addition to some of that, if you're reading on to some of the other aspects, you're also able to learn about some of the the students' identities in a very interesting way. So when I look back at these two paragraphs of only parts of his essay, I'm saying I automatically know and get a little bit of a step into who this person truly is. In addition to that, I truly see that this student is someone who has a nice ebb and a flow into their writing. And now I'm going to swing it on over to my colleague, Philip.
Great. Well, thank you, Derek. As you can see from this slide, we have a College Greenlight worksheet here. I have an image of the first 3 questions on the left side, but there's also an attachment to this presentation that says what sets you apart. It's a PDF. So if you can open that, you can see the entire worksheet that I'm talking about on this slide. As Derek outlined, he went into the different components that go into fit, as well as voice in the application process. And Michael was sharing this worksheet that College Greenlight provides students and recommenders. We want to give you another tool to help you more easily use your time and more readily provide examples within different components of the application to show voice and fit. And so this worksheet, if you can see right at the top, it says the purpose is to begin the college search to get an idea of your accomplishments and what you want out of college. Bring this to your counselor to start a discussion. It's tailored specifically for the student, but it's something that can be a great resource for stakeholders like recommenders, CBO advocates, as well as college counselors, right? So if you see a couple of the first questions, you'll see the first question being, how would your best friends describe you? The second one being, what adjectives would you say best describe you? And the third one, what in-school activities do you enjoy most? All of these questions are very broad, but what they ask the student is to really reflect and think about their high school experience in multiple avenues. It's a great starting point for, say, meeting with a student when you're thinking about getting started on that recommendation. It helps them start to brainstorm for starting something like the personal statement, not just finding which school is the right fit for them, but especially giving you kind of an outline to start these conversations and get to know the student better. Once the student has filled out this worksheet and you have a conversation with them, you'll want to hone in on a few different pieces. The first part that I like to point to really is giving a reference point for the communities that they're part of. You may know them in the context of their high school community. Depending on how well you know the student, you may know a lot more about their personal life, but this very well could be the first time you're meeting them too. So getting these conversations started, having a part of dialogue there really allows you to get to know them better in a time-efficient way, as well as really getting towards some important pieces about the communities that they're part of. So make sure that you can get into those conversations, talking about maybe some potential barriers that they face, how they have distinguished themselves in these different communities, and really hearing from their own point of view how they reflect and look at themselves. The second piece, which I've kind of alluded to already, is really it's a great resource for quotables within a college recommendation. My colleague Eric momentarily will be going through a few examples within recommendations. But the reason that I talk about this is this worksheet right here gives you the student in their own writing how they describe themselves. And it can help you start to formulate some of those narratives as you're looking for how a student develops their voice and what their personal qualities are, this worksheet can really help you start to build those narratives that may even overlap from the personal statement to that recommendation. The last piece here really is contextualizing their present experience. It gives you an opportunity once again to get a few lines about the student to put into this recommendation and really understanding more about what their life is like now and starting that dialogue. And with that, I'm going to pass it off to my colleague, Eric.
Thank you, Billy. Yeah, so as we sort of talk now about recommendations and about how we sort of build these cohesive narratives, right? We have to build that with specificity. So on this slide you see here is the notables and necessities for recommendations. These fall into three categories for us: so the personal qualities, academic prowess, and significant contributions. Billy walked us through that worksheet that helped us understand that you may find out that their favorite class is math class, that they love doing the research for academic papers, that their library is their study zone, and that their distance from home to school is a key component of how they've built their life. So in building this narrative as a recommender, it is the specificity that allows us to better understand the applicant, and it is part of the job in highly selective admissions to clarify for the room of not only committee, but in the reading process, to emphasize these sort of components, particularly these three notables and necessities, to add clarity and add definition. And so what are these notables and necessities? Well, the first one is personal qualities, and these can be anything that you find from a worksheet or just from your interactions with these students. Resilience, loyalty, this is about the person. This is about the person that you see on a daily basis. With academic prowess, we're not talking about the student. Who is that person in the classroom? Do they sit in the T-zone? What is their dedication? And what are their areas of interest? If you're learning that it's mathematics, or if you're learning that it's a specific type of engineering, this can help levy and give specificity when it becomes another conversation about the third part, which is their significant contributions. These significant contributions can be anything from an extracurricular to projects to community influence. And again, this letter that you are writing is serving as this venue, as a reference point and a venue for their voice and for their fit. This isn't to say that you need to connect directly or indirectly with Tufts University, but it is to say that you do need to, in some ways, understand that voice and fit are components and ways by which we're looking at this process. So we're actually going to look at an example first to better understand how we place these students and how we see this order. So here you'll see an example that starts with to whom may concern. We made it a little more general here, but this is a first-generation student, and so we'll take a second and let you read through here, and we have a few bolded lines that we'll take a second with as well. So we'll see here that the first bolded line is, I can say with great confidence that student one is one of the most hardworking and passionate students I've ever had the pleasure of working with, and it is this quality that would make them a natural leader at Tufts. Again, the specificity here is hardworking, passionate, pleasure of working with, a natural leader, and the final tag there is Tufts. Again, we don't need that direct reference, but we do need those specific code words, and particularly when it's aligned with further specificity. As we see in the second paragraph, student one has worked hard to be successful in spite of the many obstacles they face. This next line that's bolded is, in my AP English language course, student one chose the controversial topic of affirmative action for an op-ed project. This here is that academic prowess. What are they selecting to talk about? And how are they endeavoring to talk about that? Research and income inequality in higher education come together in the next line. And in the next bolded line, we see this extended research, however, was something they had to do on their own time. So as they have done from the beginning of high school, because their family doesn't have internet at home, student one took their work to the library after school. And we can see a little bit here now, in these three bolded lines, the ways in which our worksheet, that did ask, what in-school activities do you enjoy the most? What adjectives would you say describe yourself? These things are now starting to come up and are adding and sort of piling on this cohesive narrative driven by this specificity. And we'll actually pull out these and look specifically at the ways that they look at between personal qualities, academic prowess, and significant contributions. So here again, in this personal qualities line, we see this extended research, but the big part is in the middle. Student one took their work to the library. Family doesn't have internet at home since the beginning of high school. These contextual pieces that give us that specificity to really understand this person. Where are they coming from? What energy do they have about school and about their own endeavors? With academic prowess, this resolve to do their best work and to push the limits of time and opportunity are no practices in student one's life. We see here that this counselor tells us that student one is enrolled in 2 AP level math courses for their senior year, which is a challenge option that requires teacher approval. See, these are the type of academic sort of dedication and areas of interest information that allows me to illuminate this is a challenge option in the school environment. This institution, this high school environment, taking 2 AP courses, that requires the teacher approval. And acknowledging that for us gives us more of a context in terms of the students' not only ability, but also what they've advocated for in their own arena. And finally, the significant contributions, we see this line echoed again. The line that we bolded at first, one of the most hardworking and passionate, a pleasure to work with, and a natural leader at Tufts. Again, these can come from anything from projects to their influence within the community, but this is your space to really give us an understanding of where specifically do you see them and their talents. Again, we are looking, in terms of our application process for Tufts, for intellectually curious and playful students. And from these three highlights, we get a bit of each one of those pieces. And so now I'll transfer it over to Derek, and he'll let you close it out a little bit here, talk a little more about recommendations.
And so I really want to thank my colleagues for bringing some of this stuff forward, because I think this really speaks to a lot of general pieces, right? And so as you can see, we've identified a few general guidelines for you all to use, but there are several thoughts that I think I want to kind of leave you with before we kind of open it up to chat and kind of have questions and answers, because I think we'll be able to maybe answer things a little bit more specifically and give you all some more direct support, right? And so the first thing for me is, obviously, with some of us at selective institutions, you're right, academics mostly need to be there. And I can't say that enough. And the reason why we actually ask for the academics is because we really want our students to be successful academically. But that other aspect of having kind of like that voice and that fit is really, really strong and really connects to the values and everything that we do and say. I mean, like, in addition to that, there's a young person who wrote a wonderful personal statement, right, about how he was really pushing through and trying to do all the different things in his life. And we just really read him and we said, that's really great. But all we were able really to learn from that is that this is someone who has resilience and has been able to overcome the challenges that they face. So when you're thinking about some of those aspects and when you're writing these letters of recommendation, as well as encouraging the students who are first gen and what they should write and what you're also thinking about, the first big piece for me is, how are we really truly leveraging who this first generation student is holistically, right? I want to get a little bit of a sense that, yes, they know they might have faced some hurdles in their life, but how have they overcome them? And in spite of that, how are they academically talented and pushing through and doing everything else that they are doing in order to achieve? And I think that really gives us a holistic approach and understanding of who this student truly is and what they're capable of doing. From there, how are we also articulating not only what they have overcome, but also who they hope to become and what they hope to do in college, right? And I look at that in several ways. Sometimes at some of our schools, we know that certain things might not be offered. There might be a class or two in terms of an AP class or an IB curriculum that might not be there, or a student might not be able to participate in something just based on certain life circumstances. However, going back to some of the earlier points that we talked about, is what are things that they've done research on our institutions that they feel that they can connect with in terms of the values that they believe in, that resonate with them. And then if they get the opportunity to attend our institutions, that they would like to move forward with, push through with, and opportunities that they could see themselves getting involved with, right? And then ultimately, the last piece for me is, what are the overarching themes and what is the overarching story that you're looking to tell? What do we want to walk away with when we're seeing this student, right? Is this student someone who's overcome these challenges and difficulties? Are they someone who's also interested in arts? Are they someone who's interested in sports? Are they someone who has like a flair for business, but really wants to do something with international relations? right? I think of back to one of the applicants who I read who was coming out of New York, and this young person wrote a really one personal statement about like, what are you curious about? What are things that you like to build? And her person or her essay, I shouldn't say essay, one of her supplements rather, she talked about how she takes Polaroids because she's currently in New York and she goes to all these different museums. And her goal is one day to go off to the world and see all these different pieces of artwork around the world. And what she's done is she's taken Polaroids from the different pieces of art that she likes and has made a mural on her wall. And each day, this is a reminder of her passion and her purity and understanding of art, but also her own artistic manner of how she uses Polaroids in just a different kind of crafty way. And I will mind you, this is a student when she applied, yes, she applied to our arts and sciences side, but she was not looking at majoring art. Rather, it was sociology and even thinking about economics. So when I left away from that piece, I noticed that this is a student who does have resilience, who is willing to work hard, who likes to leverage relationships and works with people. She's a bridge builder. She was a connector. In addition to that, she was someone who had an artistic side, someone who has a flair for pushing through with her academics. So when I think back to all of these pieces for me, I left with a beautiful opportunity to really get connected to a student holistically and well-rounded. So with that being said, those are just some of our closing thoughts. We'd like to actually open it up for questions at this time.
And thank you so much, Derek and Billy, as well as Eric, for providing that great discussion about recommendation letters and personal statements. I definitely know that our counselors are buzzing away and typing those questions now. So this is your time to send any of your thoughts, any of your questions over to us. With that being said, I'm going to go ahead and transition over to our first question. So the first question, and we're going to getting a lot of these questions from our CBO counselors. So as a college access program, one of the things that they have been advised to do is establish a CBO profile when recommending a student. So the CBO profile, to those who are not familiar, is it's very similar to the high school profile that provides programmatic context to the admissions team or the college. So their question is it helpful to include a CBO profile when recommending students? If so, what specific information or data is helpful to include in that CBO profile?
Hi, this is Eric. Yeah, the CBO profile, it really could be a really valuable form if it includes information, particularly on the types of students you're supporting, what type of support system they're coming from, and then also if there's a support system that comes after their process in high school and goes into college. You know, numbers that relate to student success, to the average SAT score within these environments, those can also help us as at times those are not provided by some of the high schools. That said, I think the CBO profile is designed with those specifics that we've just said, I think really can help us, particularly making decisions and illuminate sort of the background and the context, and again, add specificity.
Thank you. And just a follow-up question. Do you advise CBO counselors to add an extra rec letter in addition to the tutor recommendations and their personal recommenders?
Hi, this is Billy Risen, and I would say absolutely if the time allows them to really give a little bit more context. Oftentimes, some administrators within a CBO may actually know the student a little bit better. Especially if the student's coming from an under-resourced, overworked kind of high school where maybe that amount of time hasn't been able to be given, and that's why a lot of CBOs are around to begin with, right? So this adds a lot of context, and I believe that we leave room for multiple recommendations because we want to add more context to those students, and if you know that student better, that absolutely would help.
Mhm. And I'll just chime in for just a quick second here too. I think the additional letter of recommendation is great as well. But even if you're like, I think having the opportunity to even give like maybe the school a call and just talk on behalf of the student too, right? So you can also do a little bit of advocacy and see if there are some other pieces that could happen. Because I have worked with several staff at CBOs who've written letters, and the letters have been great. But we've also been able to do great partnerships as well with the CBOs to kind of get a different perspective, not only just about the student, but also learn about the work that they're doing too. Because are you all at CBOs doing good college fairs and bringing students to our campuses and working with it? So it's another great opportunity for us to really like do some good positive work in addition to learning about just the students themselves.
Very good. We have a question from Elizabeth. Have you noticed that the change in SAT exam has impacted the kinds of scores students are receiving?
No, we have not necessarily seen a change in that. I think we've just been trying to move still with the trend and still talking and looking at schools as as they are, and looking at students holistically and really understanding that each student brings a different piece. I know that sometimes we'll see like numbers, and I'm only speaking here on behalf of Tufts, because I think we do look at the scores and the numbers, and as I was sharing before, we say that shows one aspect of a student. But after that and beyond that, we really are looking to see that voice, because we do realize that everyone does have different access to different resources. And for us, we do realize that, some students come from different training. So we really aren't getting, too much of a difference. I think we're really striving to still, create a diverse and inclusive environment. And as we're reading as we're looking at things very inclusively.
Great. And I think I'll just chime in here too. I would say also that at Tufts specifically, we do have a pretty wide range of testing scores as well too. So when you look at standardized testing scores, there will be, when you look at middle 50% at different places, it is a wide range with 25% below as well as 25% above. And the reason that there is such a wide range at a place like Tufts for these testing scores is because we take context into consideration. While standardized tests are supposed to be standardized, as Derek alluded to already, students coming from different communities have different resources. And so we want to not hold the context of a student's background against them in this process. And so we want to allow for variance in that. And even with the new updates on the new SAT, that kind of thing, that doesn't remove that context in any way. So we're still kind of looking at a wide range.
And to follow up, this is a really good follow-up question regarding backgrounds and student stories and how that impacts the way that your institution looks at the candidate. So question from Yi, is it risky for a student to reveal their undocumented status in their personal statement? Can doing so hurt the student's admissions chances or financial aid consideration?
So I'm going to really speak to this and be Tufts specific and say it doesn't really impact their decision. I think it's actually a brave move because I think, how we are looking at things today, that is a very honoring thing. And we know that, sharing that and coming out with that is a very tough and, humbling decision. Part of the other factors, I think, we also do, since we are, we do have the resources to also be able to provide the support and guidance from that, not just in terms of financial, but also some of the resources that we do once the student is here. Because we don't want to just bring them here. We also want to make sure that we ensure their success. So for me, when I'm thinking about students who are undocumented and they're talking through all those different aspects, I think before they even apply, and this is just me putting a little bit of my college coach hat on too, is that how do you think about the different institutions and ask the questions before students apply, so that way we can know that they can be supported, and that if they do come out during that part of the process, that that it is very well supported, and they know that it's an institution that is quote unquote safe and supportive. And I do know that a lot of folks are really pushing to do that across the country.
Yeah, and this is Eric, and I'll chime in as well. I think there are a lot of ways that a student can identify institutions that not only are, amenable to the idea of an undocumented student, but literally have policy in place to sort of support that student. Everything from Golden Door Scholars, is one I know very well, can give the student an ability to look at a research base and see what that might mean. And then just to literally point at the question, I actually interacted with a student my first year here who attended our fly-in program, and they asked me about telling their undocumented story in their personal statement, and I just wanted to ask, why do you have doubts about that? And she said that someone told her that story sounded typical. I will say that this story of an undocumented student is not typical. This story of a student is uniquely their own and is uniquely their experience and will stand on its own. It is up to the student to make specificity, but I would not sort of caution a student to think, oh, is my story going to be typical? I would instead invite sort of the specificity that they have about what they've grown up with, what they carry every day, to be sort of a light in terms of their application.
Thank you, team. Okay, we have another question from Kayla. We serve a few high schools that do not offer math classes past Algebra 2, and they do not offer AP classes. They also have very limited extracurricular activities offered and groups. What would you suggest the student do in a situation like this?
Absolutely. Okay, so Billy here. First off, I do want to say that at Tufts, we really are looking at the student in the context of their school community. The first thing we're going to do when we open an application is look at the student in the context of the curriculums that are available to them. We will see the math course offerings. It does help when a guidance counselor, college counselor can also add in that Algebra 2 is the highest level math class, and so that gives us a little bit more context. We have had some students in the past who have found other opportunities through outside resources, whether it's like an online class or otherwise. That being said, that is not an expectation for us because we're looking at the student in the context of what's been offered to them in their community. Also, the same thing goes for extracurricular activities. Oftentimes, extracurriculars can be the most varied kind of piece of the college application process from applicant to applicant, because we could have two very heavily involved students, but they're involved in very different things. Whereas one student could maybe be doing 3 varsity sports and spending after school as well as on weekends doing invitationals and track meets and all that kind of stuff. The other student could have a part-time job and be working 20 hours a week to help support their family. They could have family responsibilities where they're taking care of a little brother or sister or a grandparent before their parents get home from their second shift. We really want to look at the student in this context. So just making sure that they're advocating for themselves in these components of the application, whether it's the extracurricular activity section, there is an additional information section in a whole variety of applications, whether that's the Common Application, the Coalition Application, or the QuestBridge application. There are opportunities to give more of that context. And if you have these worries, or a student or a counselor has these worries, either the student putting that into the additional information piece, or even having the counselor just add this information that gives us context once again as to kind of the background and the impressive ability for them to kind of reach that highest level that's offered to them.
Thank you. And we have a question from Mark. If a student wants to reach out to a particular faculty member at Tufts that they're drawn to after learning more about the institution, do you recommend that they contact the faculty member directly via email, or should they contact your team? So Derek, Eric, Billy, should they contact you, or should they contact their territory admissions rep?
Yeah, I think I would, potentially say they can either contact any one of us on our outreach team, whether they just want to specifically work with me, and I can do at least kind of the introduction. I think it could vary depending upon, institution and different faculty members, right? Because I would say it wouldn't be remiss to say that we can't guarantee that a faculty member would respond, but more often than not, we do have different groups of faculty, that we've worked with in programs, and we also have different faculty on a list that we can actually connect people with. In addition to that, we also have a list of students that, a person could like reach out to, and we could connect them to a student, and that student might also have a connection to that faculty member. So there are different ways that we can at least get that information to someone, because I think sometimes faculty members, they might be a little bit somewhat reluctant to do it, and some others may be more excited about doing it. So I think it just varies. But I would say easily start off with maybe someone from us in our office, because I think, that faculty member might not, respond as quickly and as promptly to that student without an introduction.
Thank you. And we have a follow-up question regarding undocumented students. Does Tufts have funding for undocumented students?
Yes, so Tufts actually looks at undocumented students and students with DACA status as well as domestic students in our process. So they will be eligible for domestic student financial aid. At Tufts, we meet 100% of demonstrated need for all admitted students. So that is a commitment that Tufts has made, and you'll definitely want to do research for the different schools that have similar policies. The list is not as large as it should be, but it's great to be working for an institution that does have those resources to support those students in this process.
Thank you. And we have another question from, sorry about that, there's a lot of questions coming in, from George regarding the CBO profile, the CBO recommendation. Should a CBO recommendation have academic information about students if we haven't directly had students in classes?
I would say, this is Eric, I would say yes, absolutely. I think if they know an academic prowess or a significant contribution they've done academically, I think that needs to be either, it's helpful for it to be reiterated, but for it to be clarified and to be emphasized by another person in their community. It shows, again, the gravity of that sort of role, the gravity of that position or even that project. And so I think, yes, it's fine to sort of feel like, be concerned as to whether or not, hey, am I repeating something? Am I thinking again for the student? But again, I think you're adding a very significant voice in that you have this relationship with the student and you can surround that with additional context and specificity that I think goes beyond just the scope of them in the classroom, that you have knowledge of because you have conversations with that student. So yes, I think you can include that classroom space, that academic space in that conversation.
Okay, perfect. And another question from Olivia. How would students that have taken AP and honors classes, although their high school does not provide weighted GPA on their transcripts, measure with students that do offer weighted GPA on their transcripts?
Absolutely. So the age-old question of weighted GPA versus unweighted GPA, we oftentimes get questions too about, are you recalculating GPAs to a 4.0 scale? I think, not to belabor the point, but we are definitely looking at students in the context of their high school. We have historical 5-year past applicant data from students, even if from students from the same high school. Even if we haven't gotten applications from a student's high school in the past, we will use the school secondary report to understand a little bit more about the curriculum. I think, again, the college counselor or even the student, if they don't believe that this is being represented in the application elsewhere, should really talk about what they're worried about. If that's, they've taken a significant number of AP and honors courses, but it's an unweighted GPA, and you believe that kind of deflates your GPA a little bit, you're more than welcome to talk about that and highlight that piece. That's something that we will see in the application reading process, and this is a piece of the application that we spend a lot of time on understanding. But there are multiple avenues you can get that point across. I think ideally that would come from the college counselor rather than the additional info.
And this is a pretty awesome question. Do you all offer college visit scholarships for low-income students?
Oh, yes. We do. So we do an overnight program actually, where it's called Voices, and it happens typically at the end of October. And so what we do is for students who are interested in, you apply to our fly-in program. We have one for engineering students and one for arts and sciences students. And we like to look for students with diverse backgrounds who are really interested in Tufts to apply and come out. We bring you out one evening, and it's all sponsored by us. And we try to show students not only just what campus is like, but we introduce them to other students, campus resources, and show them, it's kind of almost like a typical day in life, what it is here at Tufts. They also get to see a class, and so it's a nice exposure to our campus.
Absolutely. And just to add too, this is an application process too. While it's awesome that we can fund these students to come onto campus, we do have a limited budget. So, and there's so many students who are interested. So the applications will go live in the month of August, generally mid-August to the end of August, for students to fill these applications out. So definitely be on the lookout for, again, that's our Voices Fly-In program, and that will be on our website coming in August.
And if people have questions about it, they can feel free to ask me any questions and directly email me, and I can, feel free to contact with them or, talk with them a little bit more about it as well.
Okay, so we're about 2 minutes away. I want to add one more, maybe two more questions. So the first question, this is related to recommendation letters. How much weight do you put into correct grammar, punctuation, and flow of an essay? Betty mentions we don't want to give too much feedback. We want the student's voice to be authentic. How much do you all weight those different aspects?
So for me, I think it goes back to that connection, especially here for Tufts, in terms of the values and the flow, right? I want to see a cohesive narrative in the essay. And in addition to that, I want to see those pieces, right? So is the student giving me something that is a little bit intellectually curious, right? And has a bit of intellectualism to it? Is there a bit of savviness? Is there a little bit of heart, right? For example, there was a student who gave us her personal statement that we were just reading over, just reviewing some students, and the narrative was about her being called Buster. And Buster was her nickname that she was given since she was a child, because she always knew that she didn't know that she wanted to be an engineer, but as a child, she always broke things and would break them and try to put them together. And so through that, she talked about this whole big thing about being chased around, yelled at, and called so many different names. And Buster was this fun, playful name that she's always had. And now that she's older, it's stuck, right? And so here you have a student who is telling us, or an applicant who's telling us about how they break things and play with things. And I just thought it was very thoughtful. It was very honoring of who they are. But it didn't necessarily have this whole piece of it had to be super structured. It was fun. It was very playful, and it allowed me to know that personality. So I do think it is a kind of a tongue-in-cheek piece of I want to see some of those pieces that connect to our values, but I also do want to see something that is, very well written, and that can actually have a flow to it.
And one thing that I will add too is I think for grammatical errors, and maybe a slightly unpolished essay, there's a difference between a student missing a few periods at the end of sentences, which shows we know that students know about periods. They do need to look through these essays multiple times. But maybe the one thing that we see in our essays all the time is the misspelling of the word canon. They actually spell it like the company canon, and mistakes like that will happen. Spell check won't even show up, right? When that happens, and we're definitely understanding, but we do want these essays to be obviously edited and that the best voice coming forward.
All right, team. Well, we are at time now, and I just wanted to thank you guys so much for the insightful and illuminating discussion and answers that you provided for our team. Before I jump to any Greenlight news and updates, are there anything that you would like to add that you feel like you wanted to emphasize or encourage our counselor community before we transition?
No, I think that if folks are, truly interested in Tufts or want to know more information, I would say definitely feel free to reach out to me and myself. But I know that, like I said on that last slide, and you all have access to our information, feel free to email any one of us on our team. And we're really glad to help and work with people to kind of show like that our commitment and care. And that other piece that I wouldn't be remiss to say is that as you're looking at other institutions and you're guiding students there, really think to their values and ask about those pieces and those thoughts. Because I think those are some of the pieces that help carry a student in during the admissions process. A student could really want to come to Tufts, and we might find out that their values and the way they wrote it actually might be a better fit, and they might actually get into sophomore, and that's something that could be very well happen. And that's something that we see as we all look at a very holistic approach as different institutions that do highly selective admissions.
Well, thank you, Derek, Eric, and Billy for your time. Again, I will be sending over the recording and the slides for everyone to review at their own convenience. You guys can please feel free to share this to any friends or colleagues who may find this helpful. But I'm going to go ahead and close out. And before you leave, two things. I wanted to just kind of give you guys an update that we are sponsoring our Summer Challenge Scholarship, where we are promoting the class of 2019, so our current juniors who will be seniors next year, to participate in our Summer Challenge Scholarship. It will be live May 1st and until September 1st. Students can learn more information about that scholarship at collegegreenlight.com/summer challenge. But ultimately, we are trying to help students and reward them for building their college and their scholarship list. So we already know that you guys are currently doing this with your juniors at the moment. Why not add a little bit more sugar on top and have them also participate in our Summer Challenge Scholarship? So we want them to tell us where they are in that process. We want to know what different types of colleges that in scholarships that they have their eye on. So to qualify for the Summer Challenge Scholarship, students must be graduating in 2019. We want them to create a College Greenlight account. They will complete their profile, and then also they have an opportunity to add 5 colleges and 5 scholarships to their College Greenlight list. Again, over the summer, we're going to be providing students with assistance with learning a little bit more about different colleges like Tufts, who are providing great opportunities to learn at their institution. And we also have an extensive scholarship database that we want our students to really get a jump start before they hit their senior year and it's just a windstorm. At the end, we'll have the students click on Apply to the Summer Challenge Scholarship. We will announce all winners the second week of September. So we would love to have you guys participate. This is also a really great addition for any of my counselors who are hosting summer boot camps or college workshops during the summer, or back to school. Getting students to do their assignments is a really great incentive for them to do the work and then also apply for a scholarship at the same time. For my counselors who have accounts, you guys can also pull this information using your counselor tools. You can generate reports of your students' college and scholarship lists, their application status as well. If you guys want any additional information, please feel free to type "I'm interested" in the chat box or email us at info@collegegreenlight.com. Please share, get the word out. We're excited about this opportunity. And that is basically it. Thank you guys so much for participating. When you guys close the GoToWebinar platform, we will ask you to provide us with feedback on how we did. And we also are asking you guys to provide us with any additional topics that you may be interested in so that we can bring some experts to talk a little bit more about that to help inform you in your work and really help move that needle when it comes to our students. So we can't thank you enough. Tufts team, Eric, Derek, and Billy, thank you so much for taking the time out to provide your expert insight and really more or less kind of showing that there is a bridge and that there is an interest, that college admissions team are really invested in our counselor community and really invested in really getting our students in seats at the nation's best colleges and universities. So thank you again, and thank you to my counselors, my audience, my advocates. We know that this is a really busy season for you guys, but thank you again. We're going to be hosting more webinars in the future. So take a look at those webinars, those emails that we're sending out to you. It only gets better from here. So thank you again, and we hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day and continue to do great work. Thank you. Bye, Tufts team. Bye, Eric. Bye, Derek.
Bye.
Bye,
Yes,
Billy.
we didn't know if you needed us for a few more moments, but we're still here.
You guys are all set. So we are signing off. Anything else that you want to add?
Nope, that's it.
Okay. All right. Bye, guys. I'll follow up with
Bye.
you shortly. Take care. Bye-bye.